this is Ex Nihilo, and we're going to be finishing up our boffer weapon with a duct tape skin, and I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of handle work and some general rules that I use when duct taping to keep things looking nice and neat. In the previous video we brought it up to this level here. I've done a little bit of shaping with my sanding pad. I didn't want to get too much into the shaping. Of course, with a Dremel or with other tools you can get this even more detailed, but trying to give you just a basic weapon here. So we're going to be doing this weapon in what I like to call a gunmetal and a brass. So we're going to start out our blade with this. I use 3M. It's a pretty good brand. It tends to hold up pretty well. And so first thing I want to point out about duct taping is we have a torn edge here. I'll see a lot of weapons where somebody will put that torn edge on, and as you can see it looks really crummy next to this cut edge. So we always want to cut all of our duct tape edges that we're going to be working with, so it's nice and neat. I start out with the blade with this weapon because we're going to be plastadipping our EVA foam, and our striking surfaces are going to be all duct tape. So we're going to overlap the EVA foam just slightly, okay, and we're going to off-center this piece and bring it right out to the very tip, as you can see there, and that's going to give us a measurement of our first piece. I'm going to push down one edge of this tape. And I'm going to work from this edge, and anywhere that I can keep it nice and flat, and work it along the foam. I do not want wrinkles in the skin of my tape, and anywhere where there's a transition of shape, there's going to be stress related wrinkles. Okay, so where those are, I'm going to be cutting stress relief seams here. And I'll have some down here in the base where we have a detail. We want to cut those reliefs so that we don't have any wrinkles in our duct tape. It's one of the biggest things that makes duct tape weapons look cheesy. So as we come across, we can see that if I fold this over and I fold this over, we're going to have to cut a stress relief seam there, and just wrap that over. Now remember, the more duct tape that we add to this weapon, the heavier a weapon it is, and duct tape creators' biggest competition is latex weapons, which are incredibly light and fast. And so we want to compete as much as possible with the other weapons out there, and making sure that we do not have too much of an overlap of duct tape. Now this is good, except if we don't have enough overlap, then we don't have a strong bond. So we need to have at least 1/4 of an inch overlap. Again, cutting my edges about 1/4 of an inch overlap. Lay that first edge down nice and flat. Bring it up and over and work from the flat edge and make sure that we get everything nice and smooth. We don't want any ugly wrinkles in our blade. Okay, work it out. And as you can see, there's the spot that on the previous video I had made a cut in and decided not to fix it for this video. If I was doing a personal weapon or a weapon for somebody else, I probably would have contact cemented that. But it's still going to be a safe weapon. So as you can see, with the 2.5 inch wide blade, I'm coming down over the edge about 3/8 of an inch. That's by design, so that I can get away with 4 strips of duct tape down my edges. You can certainly do whatever width you want, but that will generally give you a good size so that you won't have a little strip left over that you have to cut. I'm going to work my tip later by itself. I just cut off a piece here, so I'm going to put this aside instead of waste it. Go to my other side. Oh, the sound of duct tape. Do the same thing on this side. I'm going to find our halfway point, a little overlap. We can always trim our overlaps later and get down. Work our straight edge first. Slowly work it down till it overlaps. Looks like we're going to need some, see, we do not want those wrinkles in there. So we're going to cut some stress relief and work those wrinkles out. And again on this piece here. Nice crisp lines. Just take your time. Start going too fast with duct tape weapons, and they look ugly. Now, stress relief there. Find a large piece. Overlap about 1/4 of an inch. And over. Work our tape. Very important. Rub that tape into place. And work from one side over. Take your time. It really doesn't take too long in the long run. If you have a wrinkled piece, take it off. Start over again. Work out the kinks. Take pride in your work. figure out what you need for stress relief in order to make a nice smooth blade. Okay, now we're going to work with the tip, and we want the least amount possible on this tip. So there's as you can see, there's a lot that's overlapped. Okay, and we don't want to cut away any of the strength of the overlap. We don't want a weapon that the moment we start using it, it starts peeling. But we also don't want to create, excuse me, a heavy weapon. So always make cuts. Don't rip anything. And sometimes you find that your cuts can produce lines on the weapon that you want. You know, like this line going up through the tip. Sometimes not so much. That's quite a bit of tape there that we don't actually need. So we're going to cut it like so. That's why you want different types of scissors in your kit. You have just all big scissors, and some of these small cuts are going to get difficult. You have all small scissors and you can't make it all the way across the width of the duct tape, and your cut's going to look crummy. Okay, so we've gotten all those edges flattened down, and we're going to just put some patches over what we need to. Now, I usually don't leave anything like this on the tip. I don't like thinking it's going to scratch somebody's eyeball. Anything that we can do to make our game safer, the better. So then remember our pieces that we put aside. We're going to make our patches out of this and make them just what you need. Okay. You can get more particular with this, but again, it's a basic tutorial for a basic, good-looking weapon. I find that when you're doing patches, triangles fit in areas and conform to areas very well. So, just a little something to experiment with. Oops. Do that over again. Okay, there's our tip. Make sure everything's right down. Now, let's say you've duct taped your your weapon and you have a spot that is just not laying flat, it's not conforming, what you're going to do is you're going to be very careful, and you're going to get your heat gun out. And we're going to you're going to go over the spot just lightly with your heat gun. What that's going to do is it's going to activate the glue. It's going to take the plastic that is in the duct tape and just allow it to stretch and mold just a little bit better. And so that's just a little trick. This weapon doesn't really need it, but just trying to show you, how we can form that duct tape just a little bit better. Okay. So we're going to work down to this little spot here and cut off anything that we don't need. I'm going to lay a piece in here. I'm thinking that putting in some detail might be kind of nice. I'm going to show you how I like laying in detail for blades. So we lay that right in there because we've put our blade size over. You can see that sticking up. And we're going to trim this off so that it's nice and smooth, but we don't have to worry about wrapping it up and over because we already have our blade foam in there. So I'm going to cut this right conformed with our blade edge. Make it all nice. It's going to give us just a little detail in there. And anything we need to trim off here, important. We're going to be wrapping, like I said, this with Plastidip, so there may be some other parts and pieces that I add to it. But primarily just make it look neat, make it look nice, and take your time. It is going to be what your character relies on to stay alive. So there's our blade. There's our basic boffer blade. Okay. It's nice and neat. There's no major wrinkles, and if you take care of it, it'll last for a while. We have extra tip protection. A lot of the technology goes into the tip. It doesn't spin. Okay. And as you use the blade, there certainly will be some wrinkles that come up into it, but for the most part it will stay pretty good looking as long as you don't leave this in a terrible location. And just work it out, and make sure you take care of it. Don't smash your tip into the ground. Okay, so the next thing we're going to work on is our handle, and you don't have to. You could just use the golf club handle that's already there, but as a real weapon, benefits from having a heavier handle, which is part of the purpose of the pommel. Your control of your weapon is going to be greatly increased by a little bit more weight in your hand rather than out by the tip. As you can see, if I look for the balance point of this weapon, it's a little bit too far forward, so it's not quite so balanced. We really want it to come back into here. So I'm going to start using, we can use a lot of different things. We can use ribbon, which is a little bit chintzy, and this is a heavier ribbon, but we can use strips of leather. And in fact, what I have here is not a strip of leather, but it is a strip of naugahyde. You certainly can use regular leather. Another thing I like to use is winding it in like a rustic looking string, and you just start from one end and start working that all the way down. But today I think we're just going to do this naga hide, and I'm going to use my hot glue gun. And remember, hot glue and fiberglass rod do not mix. The heat of the hot glue, fiberglass rod is essentially fiberglass pieces and an epoxy to bind it all together, and that epoxy is very heat sensitive, and I see a lot of crafters using heat on their rods. You might be able to get away with it up near the tip, but you certainly are not going to be able to get away with it near the cross guard, okay, because it will destroy the integrity, and you'll end up blocking a sword and finding that you are holding just a hilt of your own sword in your hand, and the blade is now on the ground. So typically we wouldn't use a large amount of hot glue gun. We don't want to increase the temperature. So hot gluing our crossguard is not a good idea because it's right up against our shaft. However, this has a rubber protection in between, and the heat really doesn't get down in there. I'm going to start building this up. It's better to have a thicker handle. And so as you can see, I wrap that around twice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this all the way down, but I'm not going to take big steps each time. I'm going to pretty much add as much of this hot glue, and this hot glue is really the thing that makes the handle. It gives it weight, it binds it all together, and those are two things you really want. So we want to slowly work our way down here and keep gluing and taking our time and spreading it out. And hot glue is such a great tool for doing all of this. And as I start coming down, I'm going to continue making spots that bind the whole thing together, because this handle is going to get some use. This will be one of our player weapons that we sell to them in our store for use of the weekend or the day. A lot of people in our games don't have weapons of their own, and so they buy an in-game weapon and use it for the, with in-game money, and use it for the time they're with us. I'm just slowly working my way down. As you can see, the thickness is getting better. And the reason why I'm working down from the cross guard is I want that edge of my leather or naga hide or whatever material, you can use cloth, anything. I want that to face up so it gives me a little bit more of a grip on the weapon. Trying to make sure I don't give you guys a video of me hot gluing my finger. That certainly happens just about every time. Maybe I'll get lucky this time. Okay, made it to the end. Make sure you bind right into everything. So any surface that you have a chance to bind another surface to, do it. Don't waste the surface connection. It will make your weapon better. And we can finish this here, anywhere. Certainly more detail that is for that you could work on, be creative. Nice thing about this Naugahyde is it has a fiber layer on the bottom that really sucks up the glue, and the other side is actually like a plastic or the fake leather, whether they make the fake leather out of. As long as it gets warm, will actually hold on to the glue pretty well too. Okay, so that's your basic handle. Now, if I did this with the string, I would then go back through and put another layer of hot glue over the top. And this hot glue really adds a nice, sticky, grabby layer to your weapon. And you will be very happy that you went through and put another layer like this over the top of everything. It's not so necessary with the leather, but it will hold it together. And like I said, it just conforms to your hand, and really it doesn't slip out of your hand very well. It's just a real quick thing you can do to increase the technology of your weapon, increase the durability of your weapon. As you can see, really quick little technique I like to do, and maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. I love it. Everybody who uses my weapons loves it. So really quick little technique, binds it together. It looks really good when you have a wrapped handle. I like using paracord to wrap my handles with. Different color paracords, and it shines through just a little bit, and you're binding everything together. So you can use the tip of that to just kind of smooth it out, and that will dry in just a little bit. Okay, so we have our handle, have our blade, and while we're waiting for this to dry, I'm going to show you how we can do some basic details, some duct tape details. So what we want for cutting details is it's really nice to have just an old piece of glass around, okay? And make sure that this glass is wiped down on the surface that you're going to use it on. And then we're going to take a piece of duct tape that we want our details, and we can stick this right to the glass, and it won't ruin the stickiness of the duct tape edge. And then what we want to do is we want to cut out whatever details we're going to do. So sometimes I like to, we'll do something quick here. If I make some wavy lines here, finish it off. Okay. Now I can get my blade under the edge of that and pull that right off, and I got a nice crisp edge that I can lay down on my blade and give the blades something special. Okay. And whatever design you choose to do just makes it a lot easier if you start it on glass like this. Now, I want to finish this last one off here. Just going to give me a nice little detail. And we'll finish this off. And so your imagination is really the key to this. You can do so many different things, just adding some different colors to your blades, and it'll really make that blade pop and be special. So you can see my handle, I can now grab hold of it. It's a wider handle, gives me better control. Okay, so our last step is going to be plastadipping. So it's going to be in a couple of different layers, but I'm going to show you the first layer. Standard spray plastidip. I like using black. And really try not to use this in a closed-in area. It will affect you just like the contact cement does. So try to wear a mask and have adequate ventilation if you can. And we're just going to coat this up. And we're not worried if it gets anywhere on the duct tape. We want to make sure that we have a nice first layer all over everything. And certainly the more you flatten your EVA foam, the better this is going to look. Okay, but we are kind of quickly going through this, and we didn't use any Dremel or any tools that could make for a much nicer surface. But as you can see, even with the basic tools that I used, it's not too shabby, and sometimes a rustic look. So, okay, so I want to point out, you can see it start to build up there. It's really hard to see in this, but I'm getting it so that it's just barely starting to drip, and I'm just continuing to move it around. Okay, and you really want that thick layer on there, and we're going to put some consecutive layers on after, probably outside of the video, but if it starts to drip, don't worry about it. Just start spraying it again, and it will even out with the rest of it as long as you keep it moving. Okay, so if I just stop, of course there's going to be a big drip, but it's pretty forgiving stuff. You can actually go back over it and sand it afterwards. You can go back over and paint it afterwards, and you know, what I like is, you can see in here, is it's kind of given some age to our brass. But don't go spraying plastidip all over duct tape. It will not stay. It will start flaking off, or peeling off, actually, should I say. It will not last. So, in a sense, our blade is separated from our crossguard, And what I would probably suggest you do is put another piece of EVA foam over that edge. And let me see if I can show you what I mean here. So I may take a piece of EVA foam like this here, contact cement that in so that I break up the seam here, put that over the top and glue it right down through my duct tape, and that will add another detail to it. That's the reason why I didn't really bring my duct tape all the way down. And then you can plastidip this piece, and you'll have something that is glued over the top of your seam. But the other nice thing about leaving a seam here is if you have to redo your blade in the future and you've put a lot of work into your crossguard, then all you have to do is cut that and strip it, and you don't have to lose your crossguard and your handle. Okay, so that is pretty much all the basics of boffer construction. I'm not going to go into detailing this for you. There's probably 3 more layers that you want to do plastidip wise on this blade. And as you can see, it's a halfway decent looking blade for a quickie. Practice the techniques, come up with your own. I'm going to be hopefully posting some other videos on detailing and maybe even some axe videos and some other types of weapons videos. But review them for some of the tips that I put in. Put your questions down below. I'll try to keep up on them. And thank you very much for watching. Again, this is Ex Nihilo. The